Hello, my darlings. I am sorry that I did not get anything out last week. I overextended myself, and then when I recorded, I didn't check which microphone it was using. So it wasn't using this one, it was using my laptop microphone. And I was just done. Anyway, sorry, that's a long story, but I bring to you today, again, Who Goes There? Chapter 8. Blair moved restlessly around the small shack. His eyes jerked and quivered in vague, fleeting glances at the four men with him. Barkley, 6 feet tall and weighing over 190 pounds. McCready, a bronze giant of a man. Dr. Copper, short, squatly powerful. And Benning, 5'10" of wiry strength. Blair was huddled up against the far wall of the East Cache cabin, his gear piled in the middle of the floor, besides the heating stove, forming an island between him and the four men. His bony hands clenched and fluttered, terrified. His pale eyes wavered uneasily as his bald, freckled head darted about in bird-like motion. "I don't want anybody coming in here. I cook my own food," he snapped nervously. "Kiner may be a human now, but I don't believe it. I'm going to get out of here, but I'm not going to eat any food you send me. I want cans. Sealed cans." "Okay, Blair, we'll bring them tonight," Barkley promised. "You've got coal and the fire's started. I'll make a list." Barkley started forward. Blair instantly scurried to the farthest corner. "Get out! Keep away from me, you monster!" The little biologist shrieked and tried to claw his way through the wall of the shack. "Keep away from me! Keep away! I won't be absorbed! I won't be!" Barkley relaxed and moved back. Dr. Copper shook him. "Leave him alone, Bar. It's easier for him to fix the thing himself. We'll have to fix the door, I think." The four men let themselves out. Efficiently, Benning and Barkley fell to work. There were no locks in Antarctica. There wasn't enough privacy to make them needed. But powerful screws had been driven in each side of the door frame, and the spare aviation control cable, immensely strong, woven steel wire, was rapidly caught between them and drawn taut. Barkley went to work with a drill and a keyhole saw. Presently he had a trap cut in the door through which goods could be passed without unlashing the entrance. 3 powerful hinges from a stock crate, 2 hasps, and a pair of 3-inch cotter pins made it proof against opening from the other side. Blair moved about restlessly inside. He was dragging something over to the door with panting gasps and muttering frantic curses. Barkley opened the hatch and glanced in. Dr. Copper peered over his shoulder. Blair had moved the heavy bunk against the door. It could not be opened without his cooperation now. "Don't know but what the poor man's fight at that," McCready sighed. "If he gets loose, it is his avowed intention to kill each and all of us as quickly as possible. Which is something we don't agree with, but we've got something on our side of the door that is worse than a homicidal maniac. If one or the other has to get loose, I think I'll come up and undo the lashings here." Barkley grinned. "You let me know and I'll show you how to get these off fast. Let's go back." The sun was painting the northern horizon in multicolored rainbows still, though it was 2 hours below the horizon. The field of drift swept off to the north, sparkling under its flaming colors in a million reflected glories. Low mounds of rounded white on the northern horizon showed that Magnet Range was barely awash above the sweeping drift. Little eddies of wind-lifted snow swirled away from their skis as they set out towards the main encampment. 2 miles away, the spidery finger of the broadcast radiator lifted a gaunt black needle against the white of the Antarctic continent. The snow under their skies was like fine sand, hard and gritty. "Spring," said Benning bitterly, "is come. Ain't we got fun? I've been looking forward to getting away from this blasted hole in the ice." "I wouldn't try it now if I were you," Barkley grunted. "Guys that set out from here in the next few days are going to be marvelously unpopular." "How is your dog getting along, Dr. Copper?" McCready asked. "Any results yet?" "In 30 hours? I wish there were. I gave him an injection of my blood today, but I imagine another 5 days will be needed. I don't know for certain. Enough to stop sooner. I've been wondering, if Conant were changed, would he have warned us so soon after the animal escaped? Wouldn't he have waited long enough for it to have a real chance to fix itself? Unless we woke up naturally," McCready asked slowly. "The thing is selfish. You didn't think it looked as though it was possessed of a store of higher justice, did you?" Dr. Copper pointed out. "Every part of it is all of it. Every part of it is all for itself, I imagine. If Conant were changed to save his skin, he'd have to, but Conant's feelings aren't changed. They're imitated perfectly, or they're his own. Naturally, the imitation, imitating perfectly Conant's feelings, would do exactly what Conant would do. Say, couldn't Norris or Van give Conant some kind of a test? If the thing is brighter than men, it might know more than physics than Conant should, and they'd catch it out," Barkley suggested. Copper shook his head wearily. "Not if it reads minds. You can't plan a trap for it. Van suggested that last night. He hoped it would answer some of the questions of physics he'd like to know answers to. This expedition of 4 idea is going to make life happy." Benning looked at his companions, each of us with an eye on the others to make sure he doesn't do something peculiar. "Man, aren't we going to be a trusting bunch? Each man eyeing his neighbor with the grandest exhibition of faith and trust. I'm beginning to know what Conant meant by, 'I wish you could see your eyes.' Every now and then we all have it, I guess. One of you looks around with a sort of, 'I wonder if the other 3 are looking.' Incidentally, I'm not accepting myself. So far as we know, the animal is dead, with a slight question as to Conant. No other is suspected," McCready stated slowly. "The always for order is merely a precaution measure." "I'm waiting for Gary to make it 4 in a bunk," Barkley sighed. "I thought I didn't have any privacy before, but since that order..." None watched more tensely than Conant. A little sterile glass test tube, half filled with the straw-colored fluid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of the clear solution Dr. Copper had prepared from the drops of blood from Conant's arm. The tube was shaken carefully, then set in a beaker of clear, warm water. The thermometer read blood heat. A little thermostat clicked noiselessly, and the electric hot plate began to glow as the lights flickered slightly. Then little white flecks of precipitation were forming, snowing down in the clear, straw-colored fluid. "Lord," said Conant. He dropped heavily into a bunk, crying like a baby. 6 days, Conant sobbed. 6 days in there, wondering if that damned test would lie. Gary moved over silently and slipped his arm across the physicist's back. "It couldn't lie," Dr. Copper said. "The dog was human, immune, and the serum reacted." "He's all right?" Norris gasped. "Then the animal is dead? Dead forever?" "He is human," Copper spoke definitely, "and the animal is dead." Kiner burst out laughing hysterically. McGreedy turned towards him and slapped his face with a methodical 1-2, 1-2 action. The cook laughed, gulped, cried a moment, and sat up rubbing his cheeks, mumbling his thanks vaguely. "I was scared. Lord, I was scared." Norris laughed bitterly. "You think we weren't, you ape? You think maybe Conant wasn't?" The ad building stirred with a sudden rejuvenation. Voices laughed, and the men clustered around Conant spoke with unnecessarily loud voices, jittery, nervous voices. Relieved, friendly again. Somebody called out a suggestion, and a dozen started for their skis. Blair might recover. Dr. Copper, fused with his test tubes in nervous relief, tried solutions. The party of relief for Blair's shack started out the door, skis clapping noiselessly down the corridor. The dogs set up a quick yelping yowl as the air of excited relief reached them. Dr. Copper fussed with his tubes. McCready noticed him first, sitting on the edge of the bunk with two precipitant white test tubes of straw-colored fluid, his face whiter than the stuff in the tubes. Silent tears slipped down from horror-widened eyes. McCready felt a cold knife of fear pierce through his heart and freeze in his breath. Dr. Copper looked up. "Gary," he called hoarsely. "Gary, for God's sake, come here." Commander Gary walked towards him sharply. Silence clapped down on the ad building. Conant looked up, rose stiffly from his seat. "Gary, tissue from the monster. Precipitates, too. It proves nothing. Nothing but the dog was a monster immune too. That one of the two contributing bloods, one of us two, you and I, Gary, one of us is a monster." Chapter 9. "Barr, call back those men before they tell Blair," McCready said quietly. Blair went to the door. Faintly his shouts came back to the tensely silent men in the room. Then he was back. "They're coming," he said. "I didn't tell him why, just that Dr. Copper said not to go." "McCready," Gary sighed, "you're in command now. May God help you. I cannot." The bronze giant nodded slowly, his deep eyes on Commander Gary. "I may be the one," Gary added. I know I'm not, but I cannot prove it to you in any way. Dr. Copper's test has broken down. The fact that he showed it was useless when it was to the advantage of the monster. To have that uselessness not known would seem to prove he was human." Copper rocked back and forth, slowly on the bunk. "I know I'm human. I can't prove it either. One of us two is a liar. For the test cannot lie, and it says one of us is. I gave proof that the test was wrong, which seems to prove I'm human, and now Gary has given that argument which proves me human, which he, as the monster, should not do. Round and round and round and round and round. Dr. Copper's head, then his neck and shoulders began circling slowly in time to the words. Suddenly he, who was lying back on the bunk, roaring with laughter. "It doesn't have to prove one of us is a monster. It doesn't have to prove that at all. If we're all monsters, it works the same. We're all monsters, all of us. Conant and Gary and I, and all of you." "McCready," Van Wall, the blonde-bearded chief pilot, called softly. "You were on the way to an MD when you took up meteorology, weren't you? Can't you make some kind of test?" McCready went over to Copper slowly, took the hypodermic from his hand, and washed it carefully in 95% alcohol. Gary sat on the bunk's edge with wooden face, watching Copper and McCready expressionless. "What Copper said is possible," McCready sighed. "Van, will you help here? Thanks." The filled needle jabbed into Copper's thigh. The man's laughter did not stop, but slowly faded into sobs. Then sound sleep as the morphia took hold. McCready turned again. The men who had started for Blair stood at the far end of the room, skis dripping snow, their faces white as their skis. Conant had a lighted cigarette in each hand. One he was puffing absently and staring at the floor. The heat of the one in his left hand attracted him, and he stared at it, and the one in the other hand stupidly for a moment. He dropped one and crushed it under his heel slowly. "Dr. Copper," McCready repeated, "could be right. I know I'm human, but of course I can't prove it. I'll repeat the test for my own information. Any of you others who wish to may do the same." 2 minutes later, McCready held a test tube with white precipitate settling slowly from the straw-colored serum. "It reacts to human blood, too, so they aren't both monsters." "I didn't think they were," Van Wall sighed. "That wouldn't suit the monster either. We could have destroyed them if we knew." "Why hadn't the monster destroyed us, do you suppose? It seems to be loose." McCready snorted, then laughed softly. "Elementary, my dear Watson. The monster wants to have life forms available. It cannot animate a dead body, apparently. It's just waiting until the best opportunity comes. We who remain human, it is holding in reserve." Kinner shuddered violently. Hey, Mac, Mac, would I know if I was the monster? Would I know if the monster's already got me? Oh, Lord, I may be a monster already. You'd know, Macready answered. But we wouldn't, Norris laughed, shortly, half hysterically. Macready looked at the vial of serum remaining. There's one thing this damn stuff is good for. At that, he said thoughtfully. Clark, will you and Van help me? The rest of the gang better stick together. Keep an eye on each other. See that you don't get into mischief, shall we say? Macready started down the tunnel towards Dogtown, with Clark and Van Wall behind him. You need more serum, Clark asked. Macready shook his head. Tests. There's 4 cows in a bull, and nearly 70 dogs down there. The stuff reacts only to human blood and monsters. Macready came back to the ad building and went silently to the washstand. Clark and Van Wall joined him a moment later. Clark's lips had developed a tic, jerking into sudden, unexpected sneers. What did you do? Conant exploded suddenly. More immunizing? Clark snickered and stopped with a hiccup. Immunizing? Immune, all right. That monster, said Van Wall steadily, is quite logical. Our immune dog was quite all right, and we drew a little more serum for the tests. But we won't be making any more. You can't use one man's blood or another dog, Norris began. There aren't, said Macready softly, any more dogs. Nor cattle, I might add. No more dogs? Benning sat down slowly. They're very nasty when they start changing, Van Wall said precisely, but slow. That electrocution iron you made up, Barkley, is very fast. There's only one dog left, our immune. The monster left that for us, so we could play with our little test. The rest, he shrugged and dried his hands. The cattle, gulped Kiner. Also, reacted very nicely. They look funny as hell when they start melting. The beast hadn't any quick escape, and when it tied in dog chains or halters, and it had to be to imitate. Kiner stood up slowly. His eyes darted around the room and came to rest, horribly quivering on a tin bucket in the galley. Slowly, step by step, he retreated towards the door, his mouth opening and closing silently, like a fish out of water. The milk, he gasped. I milked him an hour ago. His voice broke into a scream, and he dived through the door. He was out on the ice cap without windproof or heavy clothing. Van Wall looked after him for a moment thoughtfully. He's probably hopelessly mad, he said at length, but he might be a monster escaping. He hasn't skis. Take a blowtorch, in case. The physical motion of the chase helped them, something that needed doing. 3 of the other men were quietly being sick. Norris was lying flat on his back, his face greenish, looking steadily at the bottom of the bunk above him. Mac, how long have the cows been not cows? Macready shrugged his shoulders hopelessly. He went over to the milk bucket, and with his little tube of serum went to work on it. The milk clouded it, making it certainly difficult. Finally, he dropped the test tube in the stand and shook his head. It tests negatively, which means either they were cows then, or that, being perfect imitations, they gave perfectly good milk. Copper stirred restlessly in his sleep and gave a gurgling cross between a snore and a laugh. Silent eyes fastened on him. Would Morphia, a monster? Somebody started to ask. Lord knows, Macready shrugged. It affects every earthly animal I know of. Conant suddenly raised his head. Mac, the dogs must have swallowed pieces of the monster, and the pieces destroyed them. The dogs were where the monster resided. I was locked up. Doesn't that prove? Van Wall shook his head. Sorry. Proves nothing about what you are. Only proves what you didn't do. It doesn't do that, Macready sighed. We are helpless because we don't know enough. And so jittery we don't think straight. Locked up. Ever watch a white corpuscle of blood go through the wall of a blood vessel? No. It sticks out a pseudopod. And there it is, on the far side of the wall. Oh, said Van Wall unhappily. The cattle tried to melt down, didn't they? They could have melted down, just become a thread of stuff and leaked under the door to recollect on the other side. Ropes, no, that wouldn't do it. They couldn't live in a sealed tank or... If, said Macready, you shoot it through the heart and it doesn't die, it's a monster. That's the best test I can think of offhand. No dogs, said Gary quietly, and no cattle. It has to imitate men now. And locking up doesn't do any good. Your test might have worked, Mac, but I'm afraid it would be hard on the men. Chapter 10. Clark looked up from the galley stove as Van Wall, Barclay, Macready, and Benning came in, brushing the drift from their clothes. The other men jammed into the ad building, continued studiously to do as they were doing, playing chess, poker, reading. Ralston was fixing a sledge on the table. Van and Norris had their heads together over magnetic data, while Harvey read tables in a low voice. Dr. Copper snored softly on the bunk. Gary was working with Dutton over a sheaf of radio messages on the corner of Dutton's bunk, and a small fraction of the radio table. Connaught was using most of the table for cosmic ray sheets. Quite plainly, through the corridor, despite 2 closed doors, they could hear Kiner's voice. Clark banged a kettle onto the galley stove and beckoned Macready silently. The meteorologist went over to him. I don't mind the cooking so damn much, Clark said nervously. But isn't there some way to stop that bird? We all agreed that it would be safe to move him into Cosmo's house. Kiner? Macready nodded towards the door. I'm afraid not. I can dope him, I suppose, but we don't have an unlimited supply of morphia. And he's not in danger of losing his mind, just hysterical. Well, we're in danger of losing ours. You've been out for an hour and a half. That's been going on steadily ever since. And it was going for 2 hours before. There's a limit, you know. Gary wandered over slowly, apologetically. For an instant, Macready caught the feral spark of fear, horror in Clark's eyes, and knew at the same instant it was in his own. Gary or Copper, was certainly a monster. If you could stop that, I think it would be a sound policy, Mac. Gary spoke quietly. There are tensions enough in this room. We agreed that it would be safe for Kiner in there, because everyone else in camp is under constant eyeing. Gary shivered slightly. And try in God's name to find some test that will work. Macready sighed. Watch or unwatched, everyone's tense. Blair jammed the trap so it won't open now. Says he's got food enough and keeps screaming, Go away, you're monsters! I won't be absorbed, I won't! I'll tell men when they come, go away! So we all went away. There's no other test, Gary pleaded. Macready shrugged his shoulders. Copper was perfectly right. The serum test could be absolutely definitive if it hadn't been contaminated. But that's the only dog left, and he's fixed now. Chemicals? Chemical tests? Macready shook his head. Our chemistry isn't that good. I tried the microscope, you know. Gary nodded. Monster dog and real dog were identical. But you've got to go on. What are we going to do after dinner? Van Wall joined them quietly. Rotation sleeping. Half the crowd asleep, half awake. I wonder how many of us are monsters. All the dogs were. We thought we were safe, but somehow it got Copper, or you. Van Wall's eyes flashed uneasily. It may have gotten every one of you. All of you but myself may be wondering, looking. No, that's not possible. You just spring then, and I'd be helpless. We humans might somehow have the greater number now, but... He stopped. Macready laughed shortly. You're doing what Norris complained of in me, leaving it hanging. But if one more is changed, it may shift the balance of power. It doesn't fight. I don't think it ever fights. It must be a peaceable thing, in its own imitable way. It never had to, because it always gained its end otherwise. Van Wall's mouth twitched in a sickly grin. You're suggesting, then, that perhaps it already has the greater number, but is just waiting, all of them, all of you, for all I know, waiting till the last human, drop my awareness in sleep. Mac, did you notice their eyes? All looking at us. Gary sighed. You haven't been sitting here for 4 straight hours while all of their eyes silently weighed the information that one of us two, Copper or I, is a monster, certainly. Perhaps both of us. Clark repeated his question. Will you stop that bird's nonsense? He always driving me nuts, making him tone down anyway. Still praying? McCready asked. Still praying, Clark groaned. He hasn't stopped for a second. I don't mind his praying if it relieves him, but he yells. He sings psalms and hymns and shouts prayers. He thinks God can't hear well enough way down here. Maybe he can't, Barkley grunted, or he'd have done something about this thing loose from hell. Somebody's going to try that test you mentioned, if you don't stop him. Clark stated grimly. I think a cleaver in a head would be a test as a bullet in the heart. Go ahead with the food. I'll see what I can do. There may be something in the cabinets. McCready moved warily towards the corner Copper had used as his dispensary. 3 tall cabinets of rough boards, 2 locked, were the repositories of the camp's medical supplies. 12 years ago, McCready had graduated, had started for an internship and been diverted to meteorology. Copper was a picked man, a man who knew his profession thoroughly and modernly. More than half of the drugs available were totally unfamiliar to McCready. Many of the others he had forgotten. There was no huge medical library here, no series of journals available to learn the things he had forgotten. The elementary, simple things to Copper, things that had not merited inclusion in the small library he had been forced to contend himself with. Books are heavy, and every ounce of supplies had been freighted in by air. McCready picked up a barbiturate hopefully. Barkley and Van went with him. One man never went anywhere alone in Big Magnet. Ralston had his sledge put away, and the physicist had moved off the table. The poker game broken up when they got back. Clark was putting out food. The click of spoons and the muffled sound of eating were the only signs of life in the room. There were no words spoken as the 3 returned. Simply all eyes focused on them questioningly, while the jaw moved methodically. McCready stiffened suddenly. Kiner was screeching out a hymn in a hoarse, cracked voice. He looked wearily at Van Wall with a twisted grin and shook his head. Van Wall cursed bitterly and sat down at the table. We'll just plumb have to take that till his voice wears out. He can't yell like that forever. He's got a brass throat and a cast-iron larynx, Norris declared savagely. Then we could be hopeful and suggest he's one of our friends. In that case, he could go on renewing his throat till doomsday. Silence clapped down. For 20 minutes they ate without a word. Then Conant jumped up with an angry violence. You sit as still as a bunch of graven images. You don't say a word, but oh Lord, what expressive eyes you've got. They rolled around like a bunch of glass marbles spilling down a table. They wink and blink and stare and whisper things. Can you guys please look somewhere else for a change, please? Listen, Mac, you're in charge here. Let's run movies for the rest of the night. We've been saving those reels to make 'em last. Last for what? Who is it going to see those last reels, eh? Let's see 'em while we can, and look at something other than each other. Sound idea, Conant. I, for one, am quite willing to change this in any way I can. Turn the sound up loud, Dutton. Maybe you can drown out the hymns, Clark suggested. But don't, Norris said softly. Don't turn off the lights altogether. The lights will be out, McCready shook his head. We'll show all the cartoon movies we have. You won't mind seeing old cartoons, will you? Goody, goody. A moon picture show. I'm just in the mood. McCready turned to look at the speaker. A lean, lanky New Englander by the name of Caldwell. Caldwell was stuffing his pipe slowly. A sour eye cocked up to McCready. The bronze giant was forced to laugh. Okay, Bart, you win. Maybe we aren't quite in the mood for Popeye and trick ducks, but it's something. Let's play classifications, Caldwell suggested. Or maybe you can call it Guggenheim. You draw lines on a piece of paper and put down classes of things like animals, One for H and one for U and so on, like human and unknown, for instance. I think that would be a hell of a better game. Classifications, I sort of figure, is what we need right now, a lot more than movies. Maybe somebody's got a pencil that he can draw lines with. Draw lines between the U animals and the H animals, for instance. McCready tried to find that kind of pencil. Van Wall answered quietly, but we've got 3 kinds of animals here, One that begins with M. We don't want any more. Mad ones, you mean? Clark, I'll help you with those little pots so we can get our little peep show going. Caldwell got up slowly. Dutton and Barkley and Benning, in charge of the projector and sound mechanisms arrangements, went about their job silently, while the ad building was cleared and the dishes and pans disposed of. What, they don't do dishes? McCready drifted over towards Van Wall slowly and leaned back in the bunk beside him. I've been wondering, Van, he said with a wry grin, whether or not to report my ideas in advance. I forgot the U animals, as Caldwell named it, could read minds. I've a vague idea of something that might work. It's too vague to bother with, though. Go ahead with your show while I try to figure out the logic of the thing. I'll take this bunk. Van Wall glanced up and nodded. The movie screen would be practically on line with his bunk, hence making the pictures least distracting here, because least unintelligible. Perhaps you should tell us what you have in mind, as it is only the unknowns know what you plan. You might be unknown before you got into operations. It won't take long if I get it figured out right, but I don't want any more all but the test dog monsters thing. We better move Copper into this bunk directly above me. He won't be watching the screen either. McCready nodded towards Copper's gently snoring bulk. Gary helped them lift and move the doctor. McCready leaned back against the bunk and sank into a trance, almost of concentration, trying to calculate chances, operations, methods. He was scarcely aware as the others distributed themselves silently, and the screen lit up. Vaguely, Kiner's hectic, shouted prayers and his rasping, hymn-singing annoyed him, till the sound, unaccompanied, started. The lights were turned out, but the large, light-colored area of the screen reflected enough light for ready visibility. It made men's eyes sparkle as they moved restlessly. Kiner was still praying, shouting, his voice a raucous accompaniment to the mechanical sound. Dutton stepped up the amplification. As long as the voice been going on, that only vaguely at first was McCready aware that something seemed missing. Lying as he was, just across the narrow room from the corridor leading to Cosmo's house, Kiner's voice had reached him fairly clearly, despite the sound accompaniment of the pictures. It struck him abruptly that it had stopped. "Dutton, cut that sound," McCready called as he sat up abruptly. The pictures flickered a moment, soundless, and strangely futile in the sudden, deep silence. The rising wind on the surface above the bubbling metal copy. Tears of sound down the stove pipes. Kiner stopped, McCready said softly. "Oh, for God's sake, start that sound again, then. He may have stopped to listen," Norris snapped. McCready rose and went down the corridor. Barkley and Van Wall left their places at the far end of the room to follow him. The flickers bulged and twisted on the back of Barkley's gray underwear as he crossed the still-functioning beam of the projector. Dutton snapped on the lights, and the pictures vanished. Norris stood at the door as McCready had asked. Gary sat down quietly in the bunk nearest the door, forcing Clark to make room for him. Most of the others had stayed exactly where they were. Only Conant walked slowly up and down the room in steady, unvarying rhythm. "If you're going to do that, Conant," Clark spat, "can we get along without you, all together, whether you're human or not? Will you stop that damn rhythm?" Sorry, the physicist sat down in a bunk and watched his toes thoughtfully. It was almost 5 minutes. 5 ages while the wind made the only sound before McCready appeared at the door. Well, he announced, haven't got enough grief here already. Somebody's tried to help us out. Kiner has a knife in his throat, which is why he stopped singing, probably. We've got monsters, madmen, and murderers. Any more M's you can think of, Caldwell? If there are, we'll probably have 'em before long. So quoth this raven. I hope you're enjoying this, my darlings, and I'd so appreciate you listening. I know I'm really not consistent again yet, but we are getting there, I promise. And I do so enjoy doing this, and I hope you enjoy listening. If you do, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And leave me a comment. I love to talk to you guys. You mean a lot to me, and this recording booth is full of cat hair. Anyway, have a beautiful week, my darlings. Bye-bye.